Hi everyone. Today we're going to talk about the Armenian Genocide. This is sort of one of the first big genocides in the 20th century, and it is one that we do not often hear about. So some questions to consider. How did Armenia ultimately become part of the Ottoman Empire? What is the Armenian Genocide? And then lastly, who has recognized the Armenian Genocide? Sort of meaning what countries in the world have taken steps to recognize that this event has happened. So here are some key terms to look for throughout this video. Remember, they will be bold, blue, and underlined. So before we start to dig in to what the Armenian Genocide is, I wanted us to make sure that we are sort of familiar with where Armenia is located. And Armenia today is located in what we call the Caucasus region. It is sort of between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, sort of very close to Europe, also very close to the Middle East. The Caucasus mountain range is in this area, but we can sort of see that the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, there's sort of this little strip of land between the two, and we sort of refer to that as the Caucasus region. This is a map of the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire is sort of one of the longest empires. It was sort of around for sort of nearly 500 years, ultimately disbanding at the end of World War I. But what we can see is that the Ottoman Empire sort of stretches into northern Africa, into the Arabian Peninsula, and then sort of up through what we refer to as the Balkans. Now, if we consider where Armenia was on our last map in the Caucasus region, we can sort of think of Armenia sort of being somewhere in here, And ultimately, we're going to see that Armenia is absorbed into the Ottoman Empire under Suleiman I the Magnificent's rule here in sort of the mid-16th century. So again, just some background on the history of Armenia. So for almost 3,000 years at this point, the Armenian people have lived in this Caucasus region of Eurasia. Again, this Caucasus region is sort of in between sort of Europe and Asia. And because of its location, we're going to see that for many parts of Armenia's history, it is part of a variety of large empires. It is an independent kingdom for some of this time, but we're also going to see that various parts of Armenia are part of the Byzantine Empire, the Persian Empire, the Safavid Empire, the Russian Empire, and those Islamic caliphates, sort of all at different points throughout Armenia's history. Because of its location, it is sort of in a spot where we do see lots of different empires having an influence over the years. Interestingly, Armenia is actually the first nation in the world to make Christianity its official religion, and we are going to see that there are sort of historically two parts of Armenia. There is Western Armenia, and Eastern Armenia. And what we're going to see is that Western Armenia becomes part of the Ottoman Empire, again under Suleiman I, the Magnificent. So Western Armenia is going to be part of the Ottoman Empire, while Eastern Armenia, which sort of closely resembles the most current borders of the country, will end up becoming part of the Russian Empire in the 19th century. So when we're talking about Western Armenia, we are really talking about regions that are now sort of still considered within the borders of Turkey. And Eastern Armenia is sort of what we now think of as the Republic of Armenia, which we see today. So Western Armenia, Eastern Armenia, Armenia is really what we think of as Eastern Armenia today. So let's take a look at the Armenians who were living in the Ottoman Empire after the 15th century. So Armenians, like most other non-Muslim groups living in the Ottoman Empire, had to sort of pay an additional tax because they were non-Muslims. And this tax sort of guaranteed religious autonomy, meaning Armenians could continue to be practicing Christians while living in the Ottoman Empire, which was a Muslim empire. And so the Ottoman Empire does rule their empire in accordance with Islamic law. So Armenians were granted this religious autonomy. However, because they were non-Muslim, they are still viewed as infidels, and they are subject to unequal and unjust treatment at the hands of the Ottoman Empire. Sort of along those same lines, Armenians are also not full citizens, as Christians or any other religious minority group were not considered equal to Muslims in the Ottoman Empire. So again, Armenians are a minority within the Ottoman Empire and are sort of subject to some unequal treatment over the course of many hundreds of years. Sort of looking ahead closer to the outbreak of World War I, Europe begins to pressure the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire is slowly getting weaker and weaker. They're actually known as the sick man of Europe. And so Europe starts to pressure the Ottoman Empire to start to recognize those religious minority groups more as equals than they had been in the past. And the Ottoman Empire actually introduces a series of reform called Tazimat, and it's designed to help improve the status of minorities within the Ottoman Empire. However, these reforms are never implemented due to the outcry from the Muslim population. The Ottoman empires had carried out multiple massacres of Armenians in the late 19th and early 20th centuries before the outbreak of World War I. And about 2 million Armenians were living in the Ottoman Empire before the outbreak of World War I. So a quick refresher about the Ottoman Empire in World War I. The Ottoman Empire enters World War I on the side of the Central Powers. They side with Germany and the Austro-Hungarian Empire. They joined the war in late 1914. And because of the Ottoman Empire's proximity to Russia, and remember, East Armenia at this time is part of the Russian Empire. The Armenian people are split between the Ottoman Empire and the Russian Empire. And the Russian army actually has a small group of Armenian volunteers fighting for Russia. Mostly comprised of Armenians from the Russian Empire, but there are some from the Ottoman Empire, because there is this, they do share an Armenian background. And this leads the Ottoman Empire to grow suspicious of the entire Armenian population living within their borders. Authorities had already started sort of a propaganda drive to present Armenians in the Ottoman Empire as a threat to security. So there's already this propaganda floating around the empire, and then the Russian army now has a group of Armenian volunteers on the front lines helping fight the Ottoman Empire. And so this leads the Ottomans to begin claiming that Armenians are cooperating with the Allies in an effort to gain independence. So while very few Armenians from the Ottoman Empire are fighting with the Allies, the Ottoman Empire sort of takes this situation and runs with it. So I want us to take a step back and quickly define the word genocide. Now, in 1915, genocide was not a word that we had. Genocide is not a term that is coined until after the Holocaust, after World War II. But we do see this word being applied to various events throughout history that meet the qualifications. And genocide, simply put, is the intentional action to destroy a people in whole or in part. And those people are usually an ethnic group, a nationality, a specific race or religious group. So, genocide, again, was not really defined until after the Holocaust. But what we are going to see is that after the atrocities of the Holocaust, we do see genocide being introduced as a word to sort of capture what happens to various groups of people throughout history, and specifically acts of genocide are sort of established. And so genocide means any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy sort of any of a nationality group, an ethnic group, a racial group, a religious group. And those actions can be killing members of a group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, imposing measures intended to prevent births within a group, or forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. So genocide can meet any or all of this criteria. And we do see many events throughout history that do meet this definition of genocide. So the Ottoman Empire, the Turks who are ruling in the Ottoman Empire, sort of take all of the propaganda and rumors circulating around the Armenian population living in the Ottoman Empire and begins to carry out the Armenian Genocide. And this is the systematic killing and deportation of Armenians during World War I. The Armenian Genocide takes place from 1915 to 1923. So it begins sort of shortly after World War I begins and then ends after the peace process ends World War I. And the Ottoman Empire takes direct and systematic steps toward eliminating the Armenian population within its borders. Estimates put the death toll anywhere between 1 million and 1.5 million. Remember, the Armenian population before World War I starts is about 2 million. So this has a devastating impact on the Armenian community living in the Ottoman Empire. And we're going to see by 1922, there are less than 400,000 Armenians remaining in what is the former Ottoman Empire. So there are sort of two really important dates we can point to that begin the Armenian Genocide. The first is April 24th, 1915, and this is the first direct action taken by the Ottoman Empire to begin what would become the Armenian Genocide. And we see Ottoman authorities round up, arrest, and deport anywhere from 235 to 270 Armenian community leaders who are living in Constantinople to the region of Ankara, where many of those individuals are murdered. And this date, April 24th, 1915, is known in the Armenian community as Red Sunday. About a month later, May 27th, 1950, Tekrar law is passed by the Ottoman Parliament, and this is sort of the legislation that allows the deportation of Armenians and the confiscation of Armenian property. So there are many actions taken by the Ottoman Empire during this genocide. We see that deportations and death camps become commonplace in this genocide. We see Armenians are deported to what we now think of as modern-day Syria. They are forced on death marches throughout the Syrian desert and abandoned. Those who do not die on the march are abandoned in the desert to die. And we see Ottoman forces also deliberately withhold supplies during these marches, again, hastening death for thousands of Armenians. We also see those who survive those death marches are sent to concentration camps. The Ottoman Empire sets up about 25 concentration camps, again, to sort of house Armenians who have survived these brutal death marches, again, in an effort to separate and ultimately kill these individuals. And we also see the formation of what is called the Special Organization. And the Special Organization is an Ottoman Empire Special Forces unit, an army unit, a military unit that's formed to aid in the destruction of the Armenian community. And it's purposefully made up of former criminals to enhance the brutality of their actions. So here is sort of an infographic where we can see massacre sites, where we can see where concentration camps are in the south of the Ottoman Empire into what we now think of as modern-day Syria. And we can see just how devastating these series of events are on this community. Again, before World War I began, there are 2 million Armenians living in the Ottoman Empire, and by the end of this genocide, there are only about 400,000 individuals left living in what would become the country of Turkey. So the Republic of Turkey, which is the successor state of the Ottoman Empire and Azerbaijan are the only two countries to directly deny that this genocide occurred. All of the other countries in the world sort of recognize that the Armenian genocide has happened sort of unofficially. However, to date, only 32 countries in the world have officially recognized these events as genocide, who have passed sort of official resolutions that have said these actions that have happened in Armenia, these are considered genocide. The Catholic Church and the United Nations have also recognized this event as genocide, but it's important to note 32 countries is a relatively small number. There are currently 195 countries in the world, and only 32 have taken steps to recognize these events as an act of genocide. Some current event news. In December of 2019, the United States Senate passed a unanimous resolution recognizing the genocide, but it was vetoed by President Trump, who cited the importance of having Turkey as an ally. Countries that sort of take steps to officially recognize genocide often are retaliated against by the country that perpetrated the genocide. And so President Trump vetoed recognizing this genocide because the United States considers Turkey an important ally. But we also do see that there are many, many U.S. presidents who will not use the term genocide when speaking of these events in order to preserve a diplomatic relationship with Turkey. President Obama, before he became president, would often refer to this as a genocide, but once he became president, took steps back from acknowledging this as a genocide. So some key takeaways about the Armenian genocide. Armenians were not considered full citizens of the Ottoman Empire and were often subjected to terrible treatment and resulting in massacres even before this genocide occurred. Armenians were not were a minority ethnic group that were subject to terrible treatment. Specifically, this Armenian genocide occurred from roughly 1915 to 1923, with death totals estimated to be anywhere from 1 million to 1.5 million. And to date, only 32 countries of 195 in the world have officially recognized these acts as a genocide. So it's sort of really important for us to recognize how few countries have taken steps to officially recognize what happened in the Ottoman Empire as a genocide. I know this was a tough video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all later.